welcome to the Eye and Ear Foundation Sight and Sound Bites webinar. Today's webinar is titled Making an Impact on How We Hear, See, and Live. And we'll focus on the impact made by the Eye and Ear Foundation over its many years, serving the departments of ophthalmology and otolaryngology here at the University of Pittsburgh. And who else would lead that webinar but our Chief Executive Officer, Lawton Snyder, who I will introduce here in a moment. Before we get started, though, I'll just make a quick reminder that we do not use the chat function during the webinars to submit questions or engage with the panelists. Instead, we ask that you submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions to us at any time during the presentation, and following the slides, I will be asking those questions to our host or our presenter today, Lonnie. We also just ask that you refrain from asking any personal medical questions or any conditions about any questions that affect you personally. And if you need medical assistance or have any questions about how to be seen or treated, please feel free to email us following the webinar or pose the question. We will get back to you via your personal email at a later date. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Lawton Snyder. Lawton Snyder has served as the CEO of the Eye and Ear Foundation since December of 2009. He directs all development activities for the Eye and Ear Foundation in support of academic and research efforts for the departments of ophthalmology and otolaryngology at the University of Pittsburgh, with the aim of enhancing the quality of patient care through advances gained in supporting research. His responsibilities also include serving as the liaison between the board of directors of the Eye and Ear Foundation, UPMC, and the University of Pittsburgh, while also enhancing the public relations and awareness of the foundation. Lawton Snyder has over 22 years of experience in nonprofit fundraising. So I'm very happy to welcome him here today to let everybody know a little bit more about the Eye and Ear Foundation and the impact that it has. Thank you.
Carrie, thank you very much. And well, thank you for those who are joining us today. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different presentation than we've had in the past. You're going to hear from me, but we're also going to talk a lot about what the Eye and Ear Foundation is doing or has done as it relates to supporting the work that's going on in these two wonderful departments. So I think that you'll find some of the stories behind this very interesting. I am not advancing my slide for some reason. There we go. So my background, I'm not a physician. Actually, I do have a physiology background, so I do understand science pretty well. I'm also not an audiologist. I have to throw that in there because we will be talking about hearing, of course, but I'm married to one. So my wife, Susan, of course, is an audiologist, and you do pick up a few things from your spouse, as you understand. I did work in healthcare. I was a trained exercise specialist and cardiovascular pulmonary rehab specialist. I worked for many years in that field, and I was also doing science in that area. So I understood a lot about the systems of the body and how they work and how they function. But I applied in a different way, and I also went and got an MBA, and I thought I'd be working in hospital administration, which turned out to be not my greatest love. I ultimately, got involved in while out in Arizona in doing work around trying to find ways to make programs better and enhance the way that they can run, and building relationships around the work that goes on in a medical education center. So now I'm responsible for raising support for research for vision, hearing, voice, balance, and cancer of the head and neck here at the University of Pittsburgh. I've been doing that since late 2009. So I'm going to tell you about some of our journey. And I'll start by saying that really everything that really goes into what we do as a foundation is completely based on relationships. It's relationships with the scientists, it's relationships with our donors, but it's also just relationships with those who are suffering with these conditions and understanding what they're going through and understanding how you can make an impact and understanding what those goals are. So One of the first people I met was Dr. Thanos. Dr. Xenopoulos has been doing research here. I think he started around 2008 or so. He was here just a little bit before I was. But when I met with him for the first time, he was telling me about tinnitus. And tinnitus we all refer to as ringing in the ears. Now, it's actually not. It's actually focused or coming from the brain. So he explained to me what he wanted to do, and ultimately, as a goal, find a treatment or a cure for tinnitus. So in learning this over the years, we've got very involved in the foundation of what he was doing. So here's how the story goes. I mean, he again started in 2009, working on an animal model. Now, my first question for him when we sat down was, my goodness, how do you ask an animal, how do you ask a mouse if it has tinnitus? And he explained that to me, and essentially uses a behavioral technique, and he uses a way to use a tone that goes over time, that like a stop the tone, have a space, restart the tone, and use normal responses for the animal, and understanding how the animal responds to noise to initiate that tone after they think an animal should have tinnitus, after it's been exposed to loud noise. So they then have a control group and a treated group, and then they're able to tell whether or not those animals have tinnitus. So very interesting, but also very effective, and was a proven model that shows that it works. So that gave them a lot of tools. Now, all of a sudden, we look at how we can determine what the cause is, which is what he did initially back here in 2011. Now we can look at how you can identify what molecules affect that. And then you can start working on how you can find drugs, develop drugs for this condition. So this all along, as he was doing this, we started to talk to donors. We started to talk to individuals. We started to talk to people who were experiencing tinnitus, who wanted to make a difference. And their support started coming through the Ioneer Foundation, as well as Dr. Xenopoulos was very good at getting support from the National Institutes of Health and Department of Defense. Believe me, it requires a lot of support to do research like this. And over time, we started to see, again, his work develop. And in 2017, he had a pretty good working model. He was developing targets that were very specific to the potassium channels that were affecting those cells in the brain that were giving us that ringing in the ear. And then as of 2019, 2020, this has now officially moved into the preclinical testing stages. I'll tell you where it is now. Right now, this drugs, I should say, because Dr. Xenopoulos actually has developed several molecules. It's being tested by scientists, and is being paid for by the UPMC Enterprises funds. And what they're trying to do is bring find a drug that's safe, effective, doesn't have side effects, that they can initiate with a clinical trial. They've already gone through some rounds with this, and each one is very expensive, but it is in that stage now that they're working towards that goal. We'd love to hear that it happens, and we hope that it happens soon. And again, this is the kind of thing that's great to be involved with when you have an opportunity to work with someone like Dr. Xenopoulos and his team. Another story I'm going to tell you is about an impact that the foundation had on cause of blindness from scarring in the cornea. So we've all met people that have had scars in their eyes. Maybe have had to have a corneal transplant at some point in their life. And this is the area that Dr. James Funderburg was working on. So Dr. Funderburg, this is Dr. Funderburg right here and his team. Actually, this is Dr. Funderburg's wife, Martha, who worked with him in his lab. Dr. Funderburg is a PhD scientist, worked in biology and chemistry and science, and then this is Dr. Ishin Du, which I'm going to talk about as well. The three of them were working together in science when I met them back in, again, early 2010. I sat down with Jim and I said, well, tell me what you're doing. And he showed me these images, which I don't have those to show you, but I'll show you some pretty cool images in a second. He showed me these images of these mouse eyes he was working on. They had the scar that we're familiar with seeing when someone has like a scar on their cornea. And he was showing me how he was clearing this scar using human stem cells that he was getting from the rim of cadaver cornea and he was using those stem cells to repair this corneal tissue. And it was a full thickness stromal tissue that he was repairing, which really was remarkable. When he showed this to me, I said, this is outstanding. This is just the kind of work that I think people would want to support. I think it's the kind of work that we should be talking to people about. He said, well, there's some struggles because, you know, the number of people who need a corneal transplant, we know lots of them, but the number was fairly small, 50 to 60,000 people a year. So right away, the partners that you want to find down the road to help you develop those therapies may not be there because the market demand may not be very big. But he was pushing on and trying to find some of the solutions. And then during a presentation from someone from the LV Prasad Eye Center who came to visit and present here in Pittsburgh, Dr. Funderburg talked to some of the folks there about what was needed in India related to corneal scarring. And it's a different picture. In India, there is far more corneal scarring and less tissue available. So where you have maybe 50 or 60,000 people a year in the US, it's more like, you know, 1 million people in India. So all of a sudden he felt he had a good partner. And so we talked about what was needed to move this forward towards a potential answer for patients. So that's when Dr. Syam Basu from the LV Prasad Eye Center became part of this team. And this is when I had an opportunity to talk to a specific funding organization. Lovely organization. It was called the Western Pennsylvania Medical Eye Bank Foundation. And a lovely person who was their executive director, Mr. Jack Wisnowski, who happened to be one of the very first people to ever receive a corneal transplant in Pittsburgh when he was just a young boy. And when I met him, he was in his 70s. And so his story was unique. This foundation story was unique because they used to supply corneas, and they kind of turned over to supporting research to work on corneal research. So they were a good fit for this project, and Jack agreed so. So we got some very nice funding from them. And what it led to was Doctors Funderburg, Dr. Basu, Dr. Ishindu, who I mentioned was part of the team as well, working together to get, and Martha, working together to get stem cells now that could be used in human eyes. And they worked on what needed to be done to do this surgery. And the very first patient to receive these cells was done here in India. This is Dr. Basu, Syam Basu. And this is Dr. Basu and Martha and Jim. They got to go to India when this was first done. When he sent me these pictures, I got chills, just chills, because it was the first time that I got to see sort of that impact that we can have through this kind of work. And I couldn't wait to tell my friends from Western Pennsylvania Medical Eye Bank Foundation. So this is the result. I said I'd show you some pictures. And this is very similar to what I saw in the mouse eyes when I first met with Jim. This is the scar of a human eye. And this is the scar a few weeks later after this treatment with these stem cells. Very remarkable, very clear. You can see the impact. You can see how this is working. So what next? Well, obviously, we'd love to be able to, you know, have this expand more and all around the world, but also here in the US. And there still was a lot of unanswered questions. You know, that trial worked with just a small number of patients. There's still a lot of work to try to ramp this up and to bring it to, you know, something again that would be effective and it could be manufactured and distributed and work with a partner. And we just got the good fortune that in 2016, by a story which I think some of you heard before, we ended up having a change in leadership, and we had from a very wonderful leader in Joel Schumann to another wonderful leader in Jose Elaine Sahel in 2016. Dr. Sahel's background was very special and very unique in terms of what he had done in his institute in Paris, where he came from, in growing the institute there. Here's some of the numbers I'll let you look at and what he did. And now, since he's been in Pittsburgh since 2016, we're on the same pathway here. You see this growth towards where we're seeing companies, patents filed, companies developed. It's important for what we're trying to do to try to solve problems, because until you get to those levels where you can take something from a university to where it's in a commercialization process, patients aren't going to benefit from it. And that's what we wanted to do with these stem cells that Dr. Funderburg was developing. And so Dr. Sahel was an important part of this picture. When he arrived in 2016, he met with Jim. He was overwhelmed by what work was going on and the work research that he saw. But he said, we need to kind of work on a model to get this to the next level. So, and about that time, I'm going to tell you sort of a sad part of the story is that Jim became ill and he had a life-threatening illness. So we kind of had a bit of a time clock on us as well to try to get this ready and get it moving. So Dr. Sahel developed a task force, and it's Cornea Task Force. This is all the physicians and scientists working on it, Dr. Dhaliwal, Dr. Janji, Dr. Yam, Dr. Yi Shindu, who I mentioned before. And now they have a picture I should have on here is Isabel Billig, who is also a PhD, but she's the project coordinator for this. So they have a very, very strict, goals that they're sticking to, and they're moving through them. And these are the things that they have to accomplish to get to that very important clinical trial stage, and they're on their way. And I can tell you for sure that that Dr. Sahel's determined to get there for sure, and I can tell you it's probably going to happen. Sadly, Jim did pass away, and so he won't be able to see his legacy fulfilled. But his legacy is absolutely cemented, as now this is called the Funderburg Project. And in addition to the Western Pennsylvania Medical Eye Bank Foundation, we received donations from Mr. Gerard Muflay, who actually helped us initially get the Isabel Billing underway and funded, and now the Hillman Foundation, the Henry L. Hillman Foundation, has been supporting this, as well as many individual donors over the years. The next story. So when I met these two gentlemen, Dr. Uma Davari and Dr. Carl Steinman, they both had a very similar interest, and they really wanted to do more in surgical innovation. Actually, Dr. Davari was the first to talk to me about his interest, and I think it was at one of the picnics that the Department of Otolaryngology was having, but he was telling me about what he wanted to do, particularly to continue to bring scientists and clinicians together and solve problems in a way that really advanced surgery. Realize that advancing a new surgical technology, it's a very challenging thing to do. And oftentimes the physicians have to, if the company that's developing this technology wants to get input from a physician, they often will fly that physician or surgeon to wherever the company is to try the technology and give them feedback. And of course, they have ways to maybe reimburse the institution for it, but it's not an easy process. And it does result in obviously some good outcomes, but it's a slower process. And it's also one that doesn't allow for the physicians and surgeons really to give enough input. And that's what Dr. Davari recognized, and then Dr. Snyderman also recognized. And Dr. Snyderman also is very focused on teaching and training new surgeons in very advanced invasive techniques or non-invasive techniques. And he also wants to try to push the envelope himself in trying to find new ways to do surgery that's more minimally invasive. So you've seen some of the webinars they've done, of course, maybe. And if not, you can always go to our website and find the webinars that have been done. Amazing work that's going on with this program that we call Pittsburgh Creates. So we did establish this program based on these ideas and these goals that they wanted to set out, bringing clinicians, surgeons, engineers together to solve the problems around developing new surgical technology and enhancing surgical technology. So it's the Collaborative for Research, Education, Technology Enhancements for Surgery. Initial funding came from a local foundation that likes to remain anonymous, but they provide the seed funding to get Creates off the ground. And since then, it's been drawing on experts in all kinds of technologies, like robotic technologies and other areas around research. Also, some very interesting work that Dr. Steinman's doing with funding from the PNC Charitable Trust and English Bonner Mitchell Foundation that's focused on understanding how to really learn from using videography of surgeries, trying to understand like what really makes the very best surgery. And really amazing work and amazing technology. And again, started out of great ideas, but also started from somebody, seeing with us that goal, and this local foundation was willing to do that with us, and it led into something I think that's going to be very special. Age-related macular degeneration. From the time I started here at the Eye and Ear Foundation, I knew a lot about age-related macular degeneration. As a matter of fact, just before I started the foundation, I lost my mother to, like old age. But as she was getting up in her years, she had significant vision loss due to age-related macular degeneration. And so I was pretty in tune with this problem for sure. And I want to know what we were doing for it. I want to know what the department was doing. And over the years, the Department of Ophthalmology had a really strong cornea research, which we heard about. Great work going on in glaucoma. There still wasn't a lot of science going, and scientists that were working in the retina, the back of the eye, which is what causes a lot of those, serious blinding issues like age-related macular degeneration or retinitis pigmentosa and these other conditions. Well, again, Dr. Sell coming in 2016 changed a lot of that. That was his specialty, and really we were growing. And from that point on, and that was when we started our campaign, and we were really focused on trying to get funding in some of these areas. And we're also very focused on trying to help recruit people. And so we were very fortunate in this period because we had someone who came to us earlier than I arrived in 2008, Dr. Salvetti, who trained here as a resident, and then trained residents for many years in his practice in Washington, PA. Dr. Salvetti said that he was interested in establishing a chair, and a chair is a way to provide funding that's through an endowment that's held, at a foundation or at the university, and that funding then will continue to provide research to drive new advances for a particular condition. In Dr. Salvetti's case, he wanted this research to be around macular degeneration. Interesting is Dr. Salvetti actually is not a retinal specialist in his practice. He actually works in the front of the eye, the cornea, and does cataracts and those types of procedures. But he had so many patients coming into him with this condition. It's such a prevalent condition that he wanted to make a difference. So that's why all the funding that he's provided has been focused on macular degeneration research. First with this Ron Salvetti chair that was established in 2008, which allowed us to look at recruiting new faculty, bring faculty who are going to be focused on this condition. And then in 2016, right around the time Dr. Sahel arrived, he established a second chair, the Jennifer Salvetti Davis chair. And both of these, as I mentioned, support work in macular degeneration. And in addition to that, we had, again, right around the time I arrived, I met this wonderful, lovely couple. And, pardon me, because, they're both deceased now, but in getting to know them, they just lovely. Charles and Lotton Snyder, no relation to me, but I feel that close. They were coming in, being seen by actually Dr. Andrew Eller, and Luella was dealing with the vision loss, and she was dealing with vision loss primarily from macular degeneration, then glaucoma as well. And so she was really, losing her vision. They were both lovely, very active, very outgoing people, and lived in Katanning here. And Chuck, said to me, he said, what can we do, or what are the things that are really important? And again, we were at this process of growth and trying to develop new support around developing new labs and bringing in new faculty. So they helped us with a donation to establish what is called the Charles Lotton Snyder Laboratory for Retinal Regeneration. And one of the Salvetti chairholders, Dr. John Ash, who is the current chairholder for the Ron Salvetti Professorship, and he's also the vice chair and director of research for the Department of Ophthalmology. Dr. Ash is now running the Snyder Lab. So Dr. Ash is doing wonderful work, and he's doing work with drugs like metformin. Also, he gave a presentation you can find on our webinar, and proteins and gene therapies, looking at a lot of different ways. And he's also working with huge teams of people including because he's the director of our research area, and the holder of our Dr. Jennifer Salvetti Davis Chair, Dr. Sinha, who came, Dr. Sahel brought Dr. Sinha here in around 2016, 2017 to hold the Salvetti Chair. Dr. Sinha came from Johns Hopkins with a whole team of 9 scientists who came with them. And their focus is, again, all around macular degeneration. So now it's almost an army of people that we have working in the back of the eye. I could go through all of them and what all they're doing, but it would take too long. But all because, again, those inspirations and that start. And we have these donors, but we also have many, many donors that we have to thank for this, because it's been, as we all understand, a condition which we want to make a big impact on. And we are. So Dr. Sinha actually is developing a lot of drugs that will both improve the ability to prevent macular degeneration, but also maybe try to restore vision from people who've had macular degeneration. And one of the things he's doing is he's actually teamed up in a partnership with a pharmaceutical company called Astellas. And they are, this press release came out just a few years ago, specifically working on treatments for macular degeneration. And then another thing that's very important is advancing the technologies so that we can see the eye better in the back of the eye, so we can maybe even catch macular degeneration as it starts at the earliest processes, as well as other conditions like glaucoma and other conditions that affect the back of the eye, retinitis pigmentosa, many of these other retinal conditions. This is a big area of Dr. Sahal's previous work that he did in Paris. It was one of the first things he did when he started his work here, is recruit a scientist. As a matter of fact, this is the first scientist who recruited Dr. Ethan Rossi to come and start this process here at the University of Pittsburgh. We now have this amazing imaging center that's focused on all of the technologies that look in the back of the eye, but particularly some of these really advanced technologies like adaptive optics, which is essentially using optics technology, the same technology that uses to look up in the sky and to see the stars and to focus on those. And he now applies that same technology in the back of the eye, so you can see amazing images. We recently received another gift specifically for a new piece of equipment from Dr. Salvetti. So this is him with this piece of equipment with Dr. Rossi, Dr. Jabalani, and a visiting scientist from France, actually from the Institut de la Vision, who were here to show us how to use this equipment. And Dr. Salvetti got to see it and witness it firsthand. And these are the kind of images that you see. It's amazing. Every single cell in the back of the eye, you can actually see their photoreceptors. You can see the rods and the cones. You can even see the vasculature in the eye. It's just amazing. As you can imagine, it's really important if you're trying to uncover problems, you're trying to solve problems for people that are developing these degenerative conditions. You may be able to catch them earlier. You may be able to start treatment earlier. Very, very important to what we're trying to do. So back to otolaryngology and around a very important topic, head and neck cancer. So our new chairman, Dr. Jose Zevallos, who just arrived actually in August of 2022, Dr. Zevallos is a head and neck cancer specialist and also doing a lot of research. So it's a primary focus of research and has been for many, many years since the department was started with Dr. Gene Myers and Jonas Johnson following him. And so they've really focused a lot of research around immunotherapy for and personalized medicine in head and neck cancer. But one of the patients who was seen here and taken care of here by Dr. Myers years ago, Mary Mercedes, and her family helped us get an initiative started really targeting this particular research. And this personalized medicine in head and neck cancer means that you're trying to understand from a genetic point of view how patients respond differently to different treatments for head and neck cancer, and how tumors that patients get respond differently genetically to different types of treatments in head and neck cancer. So it's very focused on how you can try to find the best therapies that will do the least harm, that'll solve and do the most in terms of resolving cancer for people with head and neck cancer. Wonderful work that comes out of this by Dr. Bob Ferris at the Hillman Cancer Institute, Dr. Zevallos And Dr. Davari has had a role in moving this forward. And another important program that has been established and we've helped a lot with is the survivorship program. So when someone has head and neck cancer, it causes a lot of, as you can imagine, a lot of problems with what we call comorbidities, the things that people deal with from the disease itself, but also from the treatments. So these treatment issues with radiation around your neck and around your head leave people with a treated condition where their cancer may not be there anymore, but with a lot of side effects. And what Dr. Johnson, our former chairman, focused on and understood was that, that we can't just tell people they're fixed and assume that they're going to then move on and have experience all the health that they can with their moving on with their life. They're going to have side effects, and we need to manage those side effects. We need to treat those side effects. We need to prepare for what those side effects will be. So it opened up a whole new area of exploration and understanding how we can really improve care that has really done some amazing things in terms of understanding what the steps are that need to be done to find how early you can intervene, how we can implement some of the physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy at a time to make sure that the patients really don't suffer as much from the scarring and other things from radiation. Just wonderful work that's come out of the survivorship program. And we received funding from a lot from PNC Foundation Charitable Trust, Jack Buncher Foundation, and also a wonderful couple, Redora and Dick Barton, who've been able to help us again move this program forward. Another story, another great person. When I came here, this gift had already been made from Louis Fox to establish the Louis J. Fox Center for Vision Restoration. And Mr. Fox is a commodities trader, but he also is a pilot. He had his own plane, and he really was living a very full and full life. Started to lose his vision. He was watching a program on TV about the University of Pittsburgh and some of the regenerative medicine work that was going on here. And he started asking, what are we doing in vision loss? And when he met the team here, still, back in, again, 2008, 2009, there was enough work going on that he was interested in helping establish more regenerative medicine work in vision. So they made this gift to support the Louis and Dorothy Fox made its initial contribution to establish the Fox Center. And then they've continued to support it since then. The focus is specifically now on optic nerve regeneration, which for Mr. Fox would be very important because of his vision loss and what's happened to him to help him lose his vision. And we're now trying to, build on that. And there was another anonymous donor who I got to work with who contributed also at the same level. And then many donors over the years that have allowed us, the Fox Center now to grow to a team of 5 scientists that are doing amazing work. We just now have recently recruited Dr. Larry Benovitz, who's came to us from Harvard, and world-renowned person in the field of optic nerve regeneration, really established some of the early work that's very important in this field. And he's now the co-director of the Fox Center because he's just working more or less on a part-time basis with John Ash, our director of research. And then these 3 young gentlemen here are all scientists. Isam Aldiri, who works with the retinal ganglion cells, which are, again, the cells that sort of start to form the optic nerve. And then Kunche Chang is working with both stem cell and gene therapy work to, again, try to regenerate the optic nerve or repair damage to the nerve caused by glaucoma and other injuries to the optic nerve. And then Taka Kuwajima. Taka is working with screening drugs and trying different drugs to see what can develop some potential regrowth of the optic nerve. And he's actually stumbled on something that is very exciting. He's working with a drug. You might, again, watch one of our webinars, you'll see that working with statins, and it actually has shown some benefit. And he was been able to team up with another team of scientists here at the university, working with the Fox Center, Dr. Steve Badalak. And Dr. Badalak, who is from the Department of Surgery, has another regenerative tissue technology, and combined Dr. Akuajima's technology and Dr. Badalak's technology. We're excited about. I won't go to much more than that because so far it's just been a mouse model, working now in a larger animal model. But we're very excited about the opportunity for this, as we can see it has real potential, maybe continue to move on to something that we can bring to clinical trial. Hearing loss. As I mentioned, my wife's an audiologist. I know a lot about how hearing loss affects people and how it affects their lives, and certainly understand the problems associated with it. But you know, Dr. Catherine Palmer, who's the director of our audiology program, who I've known for a long time because of my connection in the community with my wife. She particularly takes a strong interest in how hearing affects people in every aspect of their life, and how it affects people in areas related to healthcare settings where people need to understand and hear and communicate with the people that are taking care of them. So all kinds of interesting work that we've been involved with the foundation since, you know, during my time here, around looking at untreated hearing loss, its barriers to communications, and is how it affects the human condition. Remember, there's about 48 million people, 14% of Americans report some degree of hearing loss, and unfortunately, most of it goes untreated. And by 2050, nearly 2.5 billion are projected to have some degree of hearing loss. The sad part is there's a very big link to hearing loss and cognitive function, cognitive decline. It's also a risk of falling and you know, risk of increased hospital admissions and other things, because you're just, again, not hearing everything in your environment. You're also not hearing your physicians and communication about how to take care of yourself and take the right drugs and everything else. So there's a lot that's missed if we're not communicating well, and hearing is obviously critical to that, but it's also very, very undertreated. So through wonderful relationships that we established with the William Randolph Hearst Foundation, which is a communication company that founded a foundation, and we have programs such as Hear Care, which is a program which provides communication facilities and facilitators in senior living communities. Wonderful work that Dr. Palmer started, and it's taken off to be a new model for care that now we're understanding how it impacts in such a positive way people in those communities, that it's growing. It's growing, you know, around the Pittsburgh community, not nationally and internationally, because of the of what we're learning and what we're sharing with people in terms of the benefit of these types of programs. She's also implemented things such as the GATE program, which provides a cost-effective mechanism to assess hearing health in locations like geriatric centers. So they use like these nice little easy to use amplifiers in settings where, you know, a physician's going in and trying to have a communication with the patient, realizing, no, they're not hearing. So they use a simple amplifier, and then all of a sudden they can have a communication with the physician, have a better treatment outcome, and then maybe make sure that that patient does get an actual hearing test and address the hearing loss. And then programs like Hear Up, which is focused on support that we do in the underserved community. Dr. Palmer does a program where she goes with students to Birmingham Clinic and provides care, provides for hearing aids. And then also we support her through the other ways that we'll talk about in our community care initiatives. And then when Dr. Schumann, who is our former chairman, was here, and then Dr. Nils Lowen, who was one of our wonderful glaucoma specialists that was working with us, who also did science. They talked to me about what they wanted to do around trying to find some answers around glaucoma. How can we, you know, look towards a cure, a way to permanently stabilize the pressures that cause damage to our optic nerve from glaucoma? So we were very fortunate. We had a contribution from the Margaret Ritchie Battle Family Foundation or Fund, and then many individual donors matched that and have given since. And it started this initiative to cure glaucoma. Dr. Lowen and Dr. Schumann actually who moved on to other institutions, started it, but it's carrying on now with a really, really great team of individuals. Dr. Ishindu, I mentioned before, who's doing stem cell work with Dr. Funderburg, finding cells in the rim of the cornea. She found out those same stem cells in the rim of the cornea can also repair the cells in the trabecular meshwork. That's that little filter area in around the outskirts of our eye that allow the fluid to go in and out of our eye. And when those aren't working real well, that's when pressure builds up in our eye and we can develop glaucoma. Well, Dr. Du is working on trying to use these stem cells to repair that tissue and regenerate that tissue, which again would stabilize those pressures in the eye. And then Dr. Rossi, who I mentioned before, who does our imaging work, of course, that's very important for glaucoma as well. Dr. Morgan Fedorchak, who is a bioengineer, is working with these really cool technologies to take eye drops that you have to give in your eye every day and putting them into a technology like a reverse thermal gel that you can just put here in the fornix of your eye and leave it sit there, and it'll slowly release that drug over a period of time, like over a month, rather than having to take the drops every day. You take it once a month. What an incredible change of life for people who have glaucoma and have to take that every day. She's got that solid drop now, also in the commercialization stage, moving towards hopefully clinical trials soon. And then Dr. Ian Siegel, who's just amazing, scientist working with images in the eye, trying to understand the structures in the back of the eye that can help. Again, we need to understand to be able to stabilize for glaucoma. Another quick story, on cortical vision. So when Dr. Sell arrived, Pitt was already very well known for the work that we do in stimulating the brain in various ways. Some of you may remember when President Obama was here, he got to do a little fist pump with someone who was receiving a neural implant in their brain that helped them move a robotic arm, where they could go and do this or grab a piece of candy and bring it up to their mouth. Just amazing. Dr. Alan Schwartz worked with this technology here at Pitt, and Dr. Sahel right away is very impressed by all that the University of Pittsburgh has offered in these areas. And with Dr. Sahel's group in Paris and all that he was bringing to Pittsburgh already, there's so many opportunities that are starting to come up about new things that we do together here and things that we could accomplish. So we are fortunate that the Richard King Mellon Foundation, who gave us a gift to support the very first, and at that time was our largest donation. We've received a larger donation since from the Hillman Foundation, but this helped us get this program started for cortical visual neuroprosthesis, essentially putting a chip in the brain that now with the camera technology, we can actually send the image directly to the brain. Now, why this is exciting is, one, it allowed Dr. Sal to bring just an amazing team of scientists from Duke, from the NIH, from CMU, and other institutions. And they're now working with our Department of Neurosurgery that's already doing this incredible work. And they've reached a real important time where they really think that they are onto something that can maybe get into the clinics fairly quickly, because they have an FDA-approved device that can be implanted into the brain, and that they believe they can now work with to understand the right kind of signal that they communicate to the brain real vision. So we received recently another gift from the Mellon Foundation to make this go through clinical trial, along with UPMC and other supporters. Cross our fingers, we'll be able to report on this soon. I have to sort of end with letting you know that we also are very, very focused on the needs in the community. Realize that, better hearing and better vision are important to all of us. And we also realize that access is not available the same for everybody. And Dr. Jake Waxman, who I also met when I first came here, has been focused on this mission since way before my time. And but we've helped a lot with Dr. Waxman in what his program is called the Gorilla Eye Service. So the Gorilla Eye Service takes faculty and residents. They go out in the community. They do go to clinics in the community that are clinics like federally qualified health clinics, and they'll set up their their equipment and run essentially a full-scale vision clinic in that area. And Dr. Waxman's team will go in and medical students and residents, and it's really amazing to see. And they'll and that'll be an eye clinic day for that clinic. And they end up finding all kinds of important things that these people needed, but also treating people and giving them glasses and everything they need. Well, he talked to me originally, said, hey, you know, we can't be there every day in these clinics. We can maybe go to these once a month. Well, what if we had some technology that allowed the physicians and the nurses that are there, the primary care doctors, to, at least with the patients with diabetes or those who screen high risk for glaucoma, what if we gave them one of these retinal imaging cameras that anybody could use? Actually, I can use it. That's how easy it is, where you just push a button and the camera comes and takes a picture here, comes and takes a picture here, and it gives a retinal image then that can be sent and read by an ophthalmologist. And we can tell whether or not that person has beginning of diabetic retinopathy or beginning of glaucoma. So we worked with local foundations, lots of Lions Foundation, the Jack Buncher Foundation, lots of organizations throughout the city, the Macaulay Ministries Foundation, I remember all of them. And throughout now there's like 40 or so of these cameras also throughout the community, continuing to send images to this group. Dr. Palmer, this is Dr. Palmer here, also decided this was really a great thing to do and really mimic the same program, except hers, similar to the Gorilla Eye Service. It's called Hear Up, and it's, as I mentioned, also running out of the Birmingham clinic in the South Side. Now, a few years ago, Dr. Sahel and I were introduced to some people who are doing this incredible large-scale dental clinic that was held out of the first. It was held out of the PPG Arena, and now it's moved over to the David Lawrence Convention Center. And they asked us to team up with them, first to provide vision care, which we did 2 years ago. And then last year, we provided both vision and hearing care. Again, the need in the community of Pittsburgh, I can't tell you how big it is for unmet need of all these conditions. And on those 2 days, Dr. Waxman and his team treated over 700 people and gave away almost that many pair of glasses, and then had lots of follow-up care for other things, like I said, diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, and all kinds of things. Dr. Palmer saw over 400 people, gave away same number of hearing aids just about. And again, the need in the community was just very present. We probably could have seen many more, honestly, just not enough time in the day. So we'll be doing that again this year and supporting that and raising support for it. Again, thank you to all of our donors. And then recently we had a wonderful thing happen with the organization Brothers Foundation, because, you know, it's even better when you can bring care to the people like we do when we go to the Gorilla Eye Service and other things, but it's not always necessarily an area where you have an established clinic. So mobile clinics do a great job of helping with that. So the Brothers Foundation actually came to us, and they had a mobile clinic that they said they wanted to have it used for the Gorilla Eye Service. And we received this donation, and we're actually going to take the keys. There will be a key exchange next week. And then we've also received support from over time from the Jack Buncher Foundation, Brothers, I mentioned Henry L. Hillman, and our board members of the Eyenear Foundation, as well as Nancy Washington, and other community foundations to support everything we're doing in access to care, as well as our foundation really took a special focus. I'll mention that our chairman, George Fector, 2 years ago, pushed our board to say we really need to have a community outreach committee part of our board. We're really focused on how can we continue to really improve the impact that we're having in the community in the most effective and efficient way. So those are the things that we're doing at the Eyenear Foundation. I'll open it to questions, and oh my gosh, it took a good bit of time, but that's a lot, and it's not all. I was only able to tell you about 10 different stories of things that we're doing, but there's really so much more. Sorry for those things I left out. Sorry for the individuals I left out, but I thought you'd appreciate some of the stories that we told today.
Well, thank you, Lonnie. That was really wonderful overview of everything kind of currently going on at the Ioneer Foundation, and a little bit of the history of, the work that we've done, that you've done, and the projects we've been able to kind of support and move through the path towards, reaching people who are in need of treatments. So we have several questions. I would ask that if you have any more, please do send them. I think we have, about 10 minutes, so we can get through as many as possible. So you mentioned a lot going on in both departments, with new chairman joining both departments within the last, 6 years. Dr. Sahel in 2016, Dr. Zavaios just last year. And they've seemed to have really grown the departments. Dr. Sahel has added a lot of new faculty, new research lines, and of course, there will be a new building to support a lot of that, which we can talk about later. Wondering, kind of some of the new directions under Dr. Zavaios in the Department of Otolaryngology. Has he also brought on new faculty, and what are some of those new
He
areas?
most definitely has. He's hit the ground running, as they say. He's already recruited 4 new faculty. He's added someone who's going to, more science and research in head and neck cancer. Also, someone who's going to do population science. He's added somebody who's specific work on facial and reconstructive surgery, and he's immediately came in with a strategic plan and a goal, and makes my job easy and wonderful to work with when someone has that kind of pathway that they want to follow, because then we can sort of understand what they're trying to do, and we can communicate that to our donors and communicate that to individuals. So I'm very excited about Dr. Zavaios and what he wants to do.
Yes, that sounds really exciting. So I mentioned, just a minute ago, the New Vision Institute, as many people local to Pittsburgh know, and if you're not local to Pittsburgh, you've read about it surely in one of the Ioneer Foundation publications. But the new building, the Vision Institute at Mercy Pavilion, will be opening this spring. Can you share anything about that?
Oh yeah, I mean it's amazing. I mean, talk about a gift. I mean, the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center actually is building this facility. It's a 500,000 square foot facility, and it's being shared with the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. But the majority of the tower really is focused on vision care specifically. So the first 4 floors are all going to be dedicated to clinic and education, as well as ORs, and then the top floors are all research. And it's wonderful to have the clinicians and the scientists in one location, because they often will have opportunities to run into each other organically, come up with ideas and say, hey, I'm working on something, and I think this can help your patients. Or the clinicians say, hey, I need something that can help my patients. Can you help me figure this out? And we have such an amazing team in both areas that I think it's gonna really drive that forward. And the facility itself is amazing. And the fact that they're doing this, I mean, really, it speaks a lot to what Dr. Sahel means to our community. When he arrived here in 2016, I think we all knew this was something special, and a special opportunity to really make an impact that's different, and something that Pittsburgh can be very proud of, and the world can be very envious of, in terms of what we can provide and what we can do to really make an impact for vision care. So Dr. Sahel is doing that, and this building is one of the things that's going to help him get there. And I credit UPMC for seeing that opportunity.
So I have a question about making a gift to say thank you to your doctor. How would a patient, someone who sees at one of the doctors at either the Ioneer Institute or in either department, how could they make a donation to the Ioneer Foundation in honor of their doctor? How does that work?
Of course, yes, of course. Yeah, and actually people do that quite often. So sometimes you might receive things in the mail that actually give you an opportunity to do that. You can fill it out and send it in with the envelope, but now some people would rather make donations online. So easy to find us, www.ioneer.org. and easy when you're on our website to be able to find how to make a donation. And then you can, prompt you to scroll down menus to be able to find how you want to make that donation. And you can always put it in honor of whether it's a physician, whether it's a family member, even that was dealing with a vision loss or hearing loss condition or voice condition or any of the things we work with, that you can make a gift to specifically support that area, or you can make a gift just in honor of somebody.
Great. So as I mentioned, we have had, a lot of people joining the department, transition, people, as in any academic medical setting, people leave for other institutions, find different opportunities. How do the funds that we raise towards certain initiatives or goals or disease states, do they continue on even if leadership transitions, or how does that work?
Yes. So, we're obligated, through the way 501c nonprofit organizations work. When you receive a donation based on a specific direction from a donor that has an intent associated with it, the donor says, I want to make this gift to support macular degeneration research. And it's clear that that's something that fits our mission. I can't just receive it if it's not something we do. If they say, I'd like to make a gift to support, orthopedics or something like that, well, we don't do that. So I'd have to say, I'm sorry, we can't receive that. But when it's part of our mission, we can then hold the funds specifically for that, for when it's needed to be able to do something that's important for macular degeneration or glaucoma or any of the things that you'd find that you can support through the Eye and Ear Foundation. And we really cover everything. As you know, there's a lot, and I didn't cover everything that we're doing today, but from balance disorders to voice disorders to other conditions that, again, affect a lot of the people that are treated in our clinics. You can support the work that goes on there, and you can support it through, and it will be used to support research, advancing care in a way that's important for patients in the future.
So you mentioned in each of these kind of project areas, we have some major donors that are individuals, major donors that are foundations. Is there a large discrepancy between the amount of patient or individual donors versus foundation donors? Or, kind of how does that break down?
It varies, but I think that, individuals make up the highest number of our donors. And most certainly, we've received, each year, 1,000 or more donations from, individuals and foundations. A majority of those are individuals. And then some individuals make very large donations, and then we have them, throughout the spectrum and the range, all the way down to, literally, $10. And every time, any donation comes in, I get to see it and sign letters, and no matter at what level, it always feels very good to do that. And I realize the person behind that's doing something that's, what they can do. And I always value that and appreciate that. And coming, I come from a background where I understand that how important those dollars are to a family. But the foundations in Pittsburgh are wonderful, and we're very blessed and very fortunate. We have these outstanding foundations that really make huge impacts in our community, and we've benefited in these last few years from some of those in a way that is pretty hard to match from from anybody's standpoint. So we've been very fortunate, but as you see, it's paying off. It's making an impact that we're going to see in every way that you're seeing it by the really advanced specialty care that's being added to what's going on in the departments, both departments right now.
So I think we have time for just one more question. And any of the other questions we didn't get to, I will of course send those over to you, Lonnie, and we can get those answers to people as we need to. So just finishing up, let's look at, what is on the horizon. We're still at the very beginning of 2023. What's on the horizon in both departments and for the Eye and Ear Foundation in general for the rest of 2023 and even beyond?
Well, we're very focused on these goals that we were established when we started this campaign back in 2016 when Dr. Sell arrived, and it kind of created an opportunity to work with both chairmen, and it was Dr. Johnson at the time, to kind of focus on what was most important to really advance care in the most effective way. And so that created this campaign that we're currently in, the New Horizons for Care campaign, which we'll wrap up when we complete it. And it was an $80 million goal. Our hope is that we get this, get to that goal by the end of 2023. We see some opportunities to do that, but more importantly, we really want to make sure that what we're doing and everything that's coming in and supporting this work gets applied to the work in a way that's going to be most effective. So that's an ongoing thing that will continue to go on in 2023 and beyond. And then there will be, we're going to continue to work with those, our chairman, and that Dr. Zavaios coming in as a new chairman gives us great opportunity to say, look at these different directions and maybe some directions that our donors will find very important. So we'll be focused on those goals and reestablishing some new goals. But ultimately, we're going to look to continue to do what we can to make care better for our community and community nationally and globally as it relates to vision loss, hearing loss, and cancers of the head and neck, balance, voice, all of the things that we do support through work that goes on here at both departments and that we support through the Eye and Ear Foundation.
Well, thank you again. This is a great presentation, a good overview for anyone who is looking to learn more about the Eye and Ear Foundation, what we all do. I'll just make a note that this presentation will be available on our website in a couple of days, so you can always access it. And we are all available by email, any of the staff and you, Lonnie Snyder. I'm happy to answer any questions all the time. So thank you for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful sunny afternoon and please take care.
Thank you.